All righty. Welcome to the Servant Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Pat Welsh. Today, our topic is going to be service, sacrifice, and second chances. The legacy of federal law enforcement officer Chris Bingham and his canine partner, Tambo. And we're going to take a deep dive into what it means to serve, heal, and inspire both in and out of the uniform. Chris, welcome to the show. And man,
Thanks,
you have a great story to tell. And
thanks, Pat. It's a pleasure to be on here.
I and man, I'm gonna kind of let you run with it. There's so much to share, so I'm just gonna jump right in. How
Yeah,
in your 23 years in federal law enforcement, you've had three canine partners?
three. Yep,
Okay,
three canines.
so can you share how you and Tambo first began working together and what made that bond so special during the year? And he had quite a few years of service with you, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's actually it's a great way to lead in, Pat, and a great kind of a cool story. So, I started out. I was able when I started out in federal law enforcement. I was able to get on our canine unit, pretty early, and got my first dog. Named Rex, and he was a dual-purpose Belgian Malinois, which I was able to work him for 7 years, and then shortly after that, he retired, and then I got my second dog, Tina, who was a German Shepherd, and she retired shortly after that. After I took a position in Hawaii, and I worked her. She retired, and then I took on a leadership position out in Hawaii, and for whatever reason, both dogs got cancer within a year of each other and passed away. So it was very hard for me, very very traumatic. Once my first one passed away, I didn't think I was going to be dealing with that with my second one, and it just happened within that next year. She had gotten cancer as well and passed away. And for any handler out there, saying goodbye to your canine that you're so bonded with is one of the hardest things in the world to do. So I remember telling my friend and coworker that after my second one passed, I was like, I can never go through this again. It was, it was a wonderful experience, but saying goodbye to your partner that you're so bonded with and entwined with and do everything with. You spend more time with these dogs than family, friends, and anything. All those silent car rides and just that unspoken bond. So I said, I could never do it again because it's just too hard to say goodbye to them. So came back to Maryland. I took on some other leadership positions, and then it just so happened that our canine unit commander position came open, and I told myself I wasn't going to go back, and but once a handler, always a handler, and that was always my dream position to go back and lead our unit. So I applied and ended up getting it. And I remember the first day going into my boss's office, who was a former coworker when I was a regular handler on the unit, and I said to her, I said I need another dog, and she's like, "No, you're not getting one. You're leading the unit, and there's not going to be enough time for it." So it was a running joke, Pat. Like every month, I'd go in there and say, "I want a dog," and she's like, "Nope, not taking one." And then, about a year later, this is kind of a cool story. Went in there, we were a little short on the team, and I said, again, just my regular joke, I want a dog, and she's like, all right, fine. You got to take Tambo. And so the story on Tambo is Tambo was with two other handlers. Um, didn't work out for one reason or another. He was known as the dog on our unit that was aloof, guarded, stubborn, and he was just kind of the dog that everyone kind of forgot about. And I remember when she said that, I was like, "Wait, what? Tambo?" And she's like, "Yeah, you want a dog? You got to take Tambo." So at first I was a little hesitant, and then I just said, "You know what? I'm up for the challenge." And I remember going up to the kennel because he was unassigned and going in there and I was thinking about this recently, looking at him, and he was looking at me, and I saw this dog that was guarded, a little aloof, a little quirky, and stubborn. And I said to myself, my gosh, am I looking in the mirror? Because those those were all some of the things that the qualities that the quirky qualities that I had had in my life. And at that moment I said, maybe this is meant to be, and I felt like for a moment we were human and animal. We were looking at each other, but we were the same.
Yeah.
And that was a that was just a crazy moment, just seeing that. And I remember taking him, and we had an assignment out of town, and that was the first time we had spent some time together outside of work, because we were kind of slowly getting integrated with each other, before I took him home. And I remember being in the hotel room, and I think that was the first time he was kind of in a hotel room, and he was kind of hesitant to come up, to me. And I remember I was on the bed doing some work on the laptop, and I had this is kind of our first bonding moment. I had, fallen asleep, and I woke up to this scratching sound, and he was on the bed, fluffing it up. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and he leapt up in the air and just dove off the bed and ran into his kennel. And I said to him, "It's all right, buddy. You can come back up." And totally ignored me. So, went back to sleep and woke up probably about an hour later, Pat, and he was curled up at the bottom of the bed. And, that was the first time that I saw him kind of at peace.
Hmm.
And I knew right then and there that we were bonding, and we really started to really click after that going forward.
Man, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but, my wife, for years when we lived in Ohio, had one of her clients was the Humane Society, and I remember I was on working midnights, and I woke up about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, one afternoon, and I am nose to nose with the dog that was not there when I went to bed. And and when you get rescues, a lot of them, they're abandoned, they're abused or whatever, and getting that bonding is so incredibly important. And I'm not even talking a working dog, just to have it as a family dog. So, well,
It
I can really appreciate what you're saying.
it really is. And I remember even rewinding back to when I was a kid, my mom always told me, hey, you need to do a job working with animals, because I was the guy that I go to the family events or the parties, and I would always gravitate toward the where the dog was. And I'd be hanging out with the dog, and the dogs tended to gravitate toward me. And I'm a big person. I talk about energy a lot, especially I lead a large group of officers now, and I'm big on the energy that I portray. But I think dogs know when they're able to connect with somebody and people's energy. And I think that it was it was meant to be with me and Tambo, that we kind of connected, and we were kind of similar in a lot of ways. And and I could feel that energy from him, and vice versa. And after that moment, I brought him home, and that bond really started to continue, because he would always kind of lay near me in the living room. And I'm a firm believer, there's a lot of different theories with handlers and working dogs, but all of my dogs, when I take them home, I let them be a dog. It's when they go to
Mhm.
work, it's time to work. But I think it's important for that bonding process, when they come home, to let them relax little bit, be part of the family. And that's what I've done with all three of my dogs, and it's worked wonderfully with it. But Tambo would always lay near me, and so I just started sitting on the floor. And then eventually he would come up, and then I remember another time he laid his head on me. And I was like, yeah, I said, we're good now. I have his complete trust. And Tambo was just misunderstood. He just needed to be able to connect with somebody. And he was a dog, and I talk about it a lot, that was kind of forgotten, and the people nobody kind of talked about. And out of all three dogs that I worked, he was the best detection dog that I had, and I never would have thought that, because I worked two other amazing detection dogs, and Tambo was amazing, and I think the fact that we're so bonded, Pat, that just made that work
Mm.
even better. And when you're
Oh,
so in sync with this animal, when you're working them, it's like that unspoken those unspoken words. He knew what I was thinking, and I knew what he was thinking, and I knew when to shut up and let him work, and I knew when to step in, and he would alert me when he needed me to step in and help him out. And that's a beautiful thing when you really start clicking with these dogs, and you're working. It's one of the most amazing feelings. And I would tell the team, the guys on the team all the time, is, hey, enjoy this, because it doesn't last. It doesn't last forever, and we're doing a profession that many people have only dreamt about and never get to do.
yeah. So how long did you guys work together before Tambo retired?
Almost 7 years. 7 years together, and we searched thousands of had thousands of searches, hundreds of calls for service. We did presidential inaugurations, a lot of different details and stuff. Got to train in some cool places, like Camden Yards and M&T Bank Stadium, where the Ravens play, Navy Stadium in Annapolis. So we've been in a lot of cool places together, and got to do a lot of cool things. And then, toward the end of his career, he was creeping up to that 9-year-old mark, and we were searching a tractor trailer, and he was jumping. I don't let the dogs jump into the tractor trailer, but he got a little rambunctious, and tried to jump before I could pick him up, and hit his front right leg on the tractor trailer and tore a ligament.
Mm.
So after getting him to the orthopedic, they said, look, he can be fine without putting him through surgery, but just know that he can recover, but his workability after that is going to be questionable, with his mobility and all that kind of stuff. And with him getting to the 9-year-old mark, and we kind of would retire the dogs at 9 or 10. We always want our dogs to have quality of life in retirement. So we decided to retire him at that point, and it was good timing, Pat, because that was right around the time my son was being born, and that was my first one. And so Tambo kind of transitioned from the working dog to guarding my son every day. And I remember there was rumors, when before I had taken him, that he wasn't good with kids, and that couldn't have been further from the truth. He loved my son, and I think part of it is he knew my son was an extension of me, and was vulnerable. And he would always sit by his crib, and then when my son's name was Mackie, when Mackie cried, he would bark to alert me, to let me know that I needed to come in, and kind of take care of him. So I think that really helped Tambo in retirement, with having a kind of a job to do. But I'll tell you, and even till this day, because he retired in 2022, he still tries to come to work with me every morning. That
Oh,
that
wow.
hasn't wavered. He's very regimented. I feed him breakfast at 5 a.m. and put the uniform on, and then try to leave out the house, and he's still there waiting. And I'm like, sorry, buddy.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's still tough, even after it's been a few years since he's retired.
All right. Well, we're going to get into a little tougher conversation.
Yeah.
So Tambo got diagnosed with cancer. So can you tell us about that, and where he's at? And because I know
Yeah.
there's a ton of resiliency and just all sorts of great things still happening, and I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So shortly after that first injury, to rewind back a little bit, he was doing great with my son and everything. And there was this, I tell this story all the time. There was a squirrel in the yard that loved to torment him, and I would call this squirrel George, because it was almost like this modern day Tom and Jerry. He would chase the squirrel every day. And so we were going out, and the squirrel came down, and Tambo, being who he is, wanted to chase him. And instead of running down the steps that day, he leapt off. And when that happened, he came back limping. So took him to the orthopedic, and he not only tore one ACL, Pat, he tore both. So
Oh,
now he's got two torn ACLs, and take him in, and he absolutely needed surgery on at least one of them. So they quoted me at $7,000 for each surgery, and that's when Project Canine Hero, which I have right here on my shirt, came into play for the first time. And for people that aren't familiar with them, they're a national nonprofit that provides care to retired military and police working dogs that have significant health issues, and provide that care for life. So I was lucky that they funded Tambo surgery. We did the one TPLO surgery, and which was about $7,000, and his leg was stable enough not to have to do the other one. So after that, he kind of took on his next job, which was becoming an ambassador for Project Canine Hero, which we were advocating for other working dogs, and traveled around the country with Project Canine Hero, lobbying down at the Capitol building in DC for legislation for working dogs. We did the Clemson Tigers football game, Seattle Mariners baseball, Baltimore Orioles. We were honored there, and then on Tambo's 11th birthday, we got honored by the Philadelphia Phillies for their salute to service game, and that was an amazing experience. I was on the field with a World War II veteran, and a lot of military heroes, and my son got to be there and experience that. So, and they sang "Happy Birthday" to Tambo on the big screen on. So it was an amazing experience, and I was on this high, and then just a few short months later, that's when everything changed. So. Fast forward to July, it was a normal morning. Came down again to feed him his breakfast. He was enthusiastic to eat, and like I said, tried to leave for work with me that day. Nothing out of the norm. So went to work, and I normally work a full 8 hours, and again, this is where I think a higher power came in. Just wasn't feeling it that day. Didn't feel that great, and I left work about 2 or 3 hours early. So came home that day. Tambo usually greets me at the door. He wasn't there. Went into the dining room. He was sprawled out on the floor. He was conscious, but there was something off. The first thing I did, being the handler, I checked his gums. His gums were very pale, which was indicative of blood loss. His abdomen was a little distended, and I saw that he had thrown up. So I got him up on his feet. He was very wobbly. Didn't know what was wrong, Pat, but I knew something was. So I got him to the emergency vet, which was about 25 minutes from my house. So got him in. They took him right back, and they did an ultrasound, and they came out and said, look, he had a mass rupture on his spleen, and he now needs emergency surgery because he's bleeding out. And when I think back on this, and I've talked to other people since then that have had the same thing happen, if I would have worked my normal shift and came home, he wouldn't have made it. So
mm,
again, I don't know what it was that made me leave work early that day. I think it was our bond, and something telling me to leave for people that believe in that, but I certainly do. So I was able to get him there, and again, they came back and said, look, we need to remove his spleen. We need to do it immediately before he bleeds out. Here's the quote. It's going to be $7,000 to $9,000. So again, I've talked about this in other interviews. I called up my Jason Johnson from Project Canine Hero, who's the founder, and told him what was going on. And he said, Chris, it was a short conversation. We got your back 100%. Tell them to do whatever they needed to do. So immediately that financial burden was taken away, and I didn't have to worry about that. So they got him prepped for surgery, and they said, look, he may not make it through surgery. Do you want to come back and see him? He's pretty panicked. And again, this is another bonding moment, and I've talked about this before. I walked back, and his back was turned to me, and I didn't even say anything, but he knew I was in the room because his head swiveled around, and we connected eyes. And that was the first time, Pat, that I saw fear in his eyes, and I had never seen that before. This is a dog that has always been very stoic and been through all these other injuries, and this is the first time I saw fear in him.
Mm.
And I had a lot of emotion going on, but I quickly thought back, my gosh, over the last 7 years, he's been that security blanket for me, when you're going through a hard time in life, and just that dog's presence being there. And I think any handler can attest to that, that I had to get myself together, and I said, it's my time to be there for him now. And the roles were reversed. And I remember looking at him and said, "Hey Tam," I said, "Dad's here. You're going to be fine, buddy." And just talking to him, and my energy enabled him to calm down, and I could see the calm come over him. And they said, "Look, we got to get him back. His blood pressure's starting to tank. We
Oh,
got to get him back for surgery." So I left, and they said, "We'll call you in an hour and let you know how everything's going." So that hour seemed like 2 hours, and I remember them calling me up vividly and saying, "Chris, look, we got him opened up. His mass, I mean, his spleen is completely covered in masses, and we're 95% sure this is cancer. We think that there's also masses on the liver." They're like, "What do you want to do?" And I was just like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Do you want us to proceed?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "I know this dog. I know his resilience. I know his will to live." And I said, I want to
mm.
proceed." And they're like, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so they did the surgery. And then after the surgery, they said he may not make it through the recovery. So it was a rough, 2 days. But I tell you what, Pat, within 2 days, this dog was up, moving, jovial, and eating again. And I couldn't believe it. And this is a dog that just had major abdominal surgery where they removed his spleen. And if you look at the picture of the spleen, there's about 25 masses on his spleen. Um, so they biopsied the spleen, and they told me they would get back to me and let me know, confirm if it was cancer or not. But he was doing great in recovery, and they called me up and said, "Look, we confirmed through the biopsy that he has cancer, and he has a cancer called hemangiosarcoma, which, if you do some research on it, it's called the silent killer in dogs, because these blood masses fill on the spleen or the liver, and when they rupture, a lot of the dogs bleed out. So you're now looking at, an emergency situation. And I've talked to
Yeah.
so many people since then that have had this happen with their dog, and again, they didn't make it back in time to get to the dog, and he didn't make it. So my next step after that, Pat, was getting an appointment with an oncologist.
Wow. So more expense
Yep.
and yep. And just share a little bit about, because I know you're really passionate about Project K9 Hero.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give a short history? I mean, how did Jason get involved in creating and founding that project, and how's it impacted your guys' lives and the lives of other canines and handlers?
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and Jason Johnson, the founder, he'll tell you the story. He started the nonprofit with $500 in his pocket, because after his canine, Flash, had passed away, and his dog was the American Humane 2018 Law Enforcement Dog of the Year, and he wanted to do something to honor Flash, and as well as other working dogs. So He started Project Canine Hero, and started taking in a few dogs at a time. And again, he wanted to, because what a lot of people don't know, Pat, is when these working dogs retire, there's nothing set up for them in retirement like there are for us as humans, as police officers or military officers. There's no pension, there's no medical setup. So when these dogs retire, that burden of cost falls on the handler. And that's when the dogs really kind of need you, because I always correlate them to like NFL athletes, right? Is they work their careers, and they put a lot of wear and tear on their body, and then when they retire, the body starts to break down, and that's when a lot of these medical issues happen. So Jason created the nonprofit, and I had met Jason at a canine hits conference in DC a couple years prior, and we had stayed in contact. And Jason had helped another dog on our unit that had leukemia, a young dog on our unit that had to retire and had leukemia. So Jason was able to provide care for that dog with chemotherapy and prolong the dog's life at least for a year and a half in retirement to give that time with the family and the closure
Mm,
that was needed. And so when I called Jason up after Tambo had torn his ACLs, he got Tambo right in the program, and Jason and I become good friends since then, and he's now gotten about 300 and I think 352 dogs into the program, and he does it the right way. He takes in about 50 some dogs a year, and it's dogs that have significant health issues, and he always wants to make sure he has enough funds to take care of the dog's needs. So we had tallied up, Tambo's care, a few weeks back, and going back to all his surgeries and the chemotherapy, we're now over like $22,000 that they've now funded toward Tambo's care. And it's not just Tambo they've done that for. There's countless dogs in the program. If you go
yeah.
onto their website at projectcaninehere.org, there's dogs that have been, shot or stabbed in the line of duty, or other dogs that have had cancer, that they're providing care for these heroes in retirement, and really giving them a second chance at life. And one of the most amazing things that Jason does is he has a sanctuary at in Tennessee, where he takes in the dogs that are not have gone through some traumatic PTSD and are not adoptable out yet. Takes them into the sanctuary, rehabs them, and then gets them adopted back out so they can have a second chance at life. So the program's been a lifesaver for me and for countless other handlers.
Oh, that's incredible. Um, so I understand Tambo has like defied all the odds uh,
Mhm.
that the doctors want to tell you about, but you tell them, keep it to yourself. He's doing well, and don't give me any uh, projected dates and stuff. How's he impacting the lives of people, not just you and your family, but how is his journey right now impacting the lives of other people?
It's been amazing. This when I got to the oncologist, they had said that they were convinced that the cancer had spread to the liver, and again, rewinding back to the initial surgery, the vet's almost kind of saying, "Hey, do you want to proceed with this? He may not make it." To the recovery, saying, "Hey, he may not make it." To now, them telling me he had 2 weeks to live after the surgery, and now fast forwarding to the oncologist saying, "Hey, we think this cancer's spread to the liver, and you may have to make a decision, because if it's on the liver, chemotherapy isn't going to do much." And then they took him back for the ultrasound, came back, and in fact the cancer hadn't spread to the liver yet. And we started chemotherapy that day and went through 5 sessions. And as I did that, I really started to document everything on social media and Instagram. And when that happened, Pat, you know, I had a lot of people reaching out to me that were affected by cancer, whether it was them, um, or people reaching out to, hey, my dad has stage 4 pancreatic cancer and doesn't have much longer to live, but he sees Tambo, and he sees how resilient he is and how he's defying the odds, and how he continues to live in the present and be in the moment, and it's inspiring him to keep fighting because he wanted to give up. Or a mother that said that their child is going through cancer, and they love seeing Tambo's video, and it brings joy to them in a moment of in a sad time. And it
Yeah.
really started to hit me that what Tambo was doing for other people. And it was really powerful. And then to come full circle, this past last weekend, out of the blue, my dad hadn't been feeling well, and he just got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and which was tough. And I'm trying to talk to my dad about the diagnosis, and all he wanted to talk about was Tambo. He's like, how's Tambo doing? He's like, when are his shirts going to be done? I want to get one of his Defy the Odds shirts. And because I think he was able to, people can relate, and it's kind of like when I worked in Pat. you go to work and you're not in that fight alone. You're in something together, and you see somebody else or an animal that's going through that, or a dog like Tambo that's going through it, and continuing to fight regardless of everything that's been put in front of him, going back to being the dog that nobody wanted, to being an amazing detection dog, to being injured and not being able to move, to tearing both ACLs, to now having cancer and continuing to fight. And he's inspired me. He's inspired me to be, not that I wasn't a good person, but to live more in the present. I mean, how many countless times I would come home after work and just start scrolling on social media and not being present for my son, and just being appreciative of
Mm.
of what's in front of me. And it's amazing, and he's had a whole community, rally around him, and the outpour of, packages to the house, and stuff, and treats, and well wishes, and people reaching out, and nutritional companies reaching out and offering to fund his nutrition. It's been amazing. It's been really, really heartfelt, and this is the first time I'm sharing it with anybody. Is it inspired me to write a children's book, and I
Really?
just, yeah, I just finished it. Working on the illustration right now, and but the theme of it is it's that, it talks about, Tambo, a dog that served the country, and then got sick. It doesn't mention cancer, but then is also
Yeah.
now, fighting and continuing to put his best foot forward, regardless of the odds are stacked against him, and never giving up. And I won't give away the whole theme of the story, but at the end, I dedicate it to any child that's ever felt alone, or scared, or is going through something, and in a way that they can understand. So he's really inspired me to do a lot of things. And if you asked me, 2 years ago, I'd be writing a children's book, I'd have said you were crazy.
Oh,
So yeah, he's not only changed my life, but he's changed the life of others. And I think sometimes we forget how powerful and impactful dogs can be, in our life. And I remember the first podcast I did, the I Dare You podcast, Darren, the host, had asked me, what's one thing that can bring the left and right together? And I said, a dog. I said, you can have your far left and your far right, but you put that dog in the middle, and for a brief moment, they're not concerned about any of their differences. They're focusing on that dog and the comfort it brings to them. And sometimes we forget about how powerful dogs can be to us, and how much, we need them in our lives, and what we can learn from them.
I I just have to chuckle a little bit though when you said that, because you're coming out of federal law enforcement, and the first thing I visualized was Commander or whatever, President Biden's German Shepherd, did not bring the left and the right together, or
No.
anybody. So I just that was because of your federal law enforcement career and everything. I'm like, yeah, man, I don't think the Secret Service would agree with you on that one,
Yeah,
but
maybe not. Maybe not. Yeah,
oh
maybe they need to try again now, with everything going on in the country now, and
yeah,
but yeah.
hey, maybe you should take Tambo up to Capitol Hill and uh,
Yeah.
and introduce some politicians.
I think
Hey,
I think that's a great idea. It may work.
so hey, Tampo's got his own Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah, what is it?
it's
I,
lowercase k, the number nine, and then underscore Tambo, Tambo, and it's a public profile. You can follow it. I've been documenting the journey. I've I documented all his chemotherapy journey, and I was, doing different themes. I did a John Cena theme one day for, the never give up, and he had the John Cena shirt, and I had the towel, and then I did a Rocky theme. He had boxing gloves on, and so in a time of kind of a bad and sad situation. I wanted to show the positive light on it, and the
Yeah.
resiliency of Tambo, and now we're on an oral chemo pill now. We've graduated from the intravenous, and we're doing an oral chemo pill at least for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I'm tackling the cancer from every angle. I take him to rehab once a week. He's doing he's getting medical massages, doing hydrotherapy, again, all funded by Project Canine Hero. And then
Mm.
I'm attacking it holistically with turkey tail mushroom, which is supposed to be great for cancer. And now I have a nutrition company that is backing me on with his nutrition. So I'm hitting this from every angle because I truly believe that when with humans as well, when you're dealing with cancer, you have to tackle it from every angle and not just say, hey, I'm going to take chemotherapy. You have to be mentally strong, and with the rehab is keeping his mobility strong, keeping him moving, putting good nutrients into his body. And then for me, just that's where I come in, just being positive for him,
And being there.
because
Yeah.
yeah. And I would tell the handlers all the time when we would work them is everything you do goes down the end of that lead. So your energy is also going to have a huge impact for that dog. And so when I come home every day, if I'm stressed or whatever, I try to go to the gym before that, but I got to change my mindset when I come in and be there for him because he feeds off that.
Wow. And now this is going to sound like it's coming completely out of left field, but it's amazing that in the last 2 weeks, you're my second guest uh, with traveling through that journey of cancer. My first guest, DK Kang, uh, young guy, I mean, in his 30s, and his wife had endometriosis, and they couldn't have kids because she had to have the full hysterectomy. And they were talking about adoption and exploring that when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Everything you just said about attacking it holistically is the same story that he shared of how he dove into it and how yeah, nutrition, the massage, all those same things, and how it's made a difference in her recovery and she had chemo, radiation, and she's cancer free now. And this has all
Amazing.
happened within the last year.
Wow.
but but the reality is that what you're saying, sharing, is those things do have an impact. And he had the same position of he told his employer that he wanted them to adjust his uh, ability to work remotely, and they fired him. So he was
Wow.
out. Now he's without a job,
Mm,
and he got $60,000. They didn't have insurance,
jeez.
but the nice the nice lining was because he got fired, he was able to Cobra the health insurance from his former employer.
Yeah.
So that helped. But the reality of this holistic approach to what most people just go, we got to give up.
Yeah.
I got to put my canine down. Or your parent says, well, I'm going to die anyway. I'm not gonna take chemo, and I'll just let nature take its course. No, mindset and a holistic approach many, many times can really help. So I'm glad you're sharing that. I just think it's you. I call it divine intervention.
Yes.
Is two guests in 2 weeks have the same experience and story. So with Tambo, does he have any appearances coming up that people could get a chance to maybe meet and greet or see him or anything like that?
Yeah, we got a lot of cool things. A couple of things that I can't quite talk about yet, but they're coming to fruition soon, which are going to be super exciting. But the ones I can talk about is if everyone's familiar with the doggist Elias, you can find him on Instagram. He's got 7.7 million followers. He's the guy that goes around taking pictures of everyone's dogs. Works with a lot of the celebrities. He just interviewed Jane Goodall before she had
Yeah.
she had passed away. So we had gotten together, and his team reached out to me. So I did an interview, a 30-minute interview with Elias. That's on his new Substack series on YouTube, and it's we talk about Tambo's working career and his cancer fight. So I was super excited about that, and then talking to Elias, he's from Philly, which leads me to the other thing we got coming up on November 16th. Myself, along with and Tambo, along with the Project Canine Hero team, are going to be honored by the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football against the Lions. So super excited about that. Project Canine Hero is going to be the nonprofit of the game. We'll have a table set up, putting out more information if anyone's in the Philly area about Project Canine Hero. And then the cool part is I'll be down on the field with Tambo before the game, getting recognized for the salute to service night. So I've already gotten him a Jalen Hurts jersey that he'll be wearing. So I was trying to do a custom one, but I've been having some difficulty finding someone to make me one. And then I'll have a salute to service Brian Dawkins jersey on. So it's super excited about that coming up. And then he's got some other things that we're working on, his own coffee flavor. I'm working with a coffee company, so it's not just a hey, I got this flavor, let's name it Canine Tambo. We actually he sent me a bunch of samples. I told him the specific roast that I wanted, and so we're working on that, and I'll have some announcements coming out on that soon. And the great thing about all this, Pat, is like with stuff like that, and then the shirts that we've been selling through Houndbound Brewing, it's not for any type of profit for me. A majority of the proceeds are going back to Project Canine Hero to fund not only Tambo's care but the other heroes that are in that program. So for people that are looking for charities to donate to, and sometimes wonder with the bigger ones if the money's really going to that, I'm proof, and Tambo's proof that donations to Project Canine Hero and supporting initiatives like that care is directly going to these dogs that are out there that desperately need it.
You said what was the brew? The home brew
Um,
or
yeah, it's so I linked up with a company through Instagram, and they're called Houndbound Brewing. And if you go to houndboundbrewing.com, you can find them on my Instagram page as well. But they're selling Tambo's Defy the Odds shirts up until, I think, actually we did a pre-order that ends today. But I'm sure if more people wanted some, we could get another order out. But we created a pretty cool shirt, Pat, that I designed with Kevin over there, and I wanted a shirt that really kind of encompassed his working career, that also encompassed his resilience and defying the odds, and then also anybody that's been touched by cancer or affected by cancer. So it's a picture of Tambo. He's got his hand on an explosive device. It's got the Capitol building in the background, symbolizing what he's done for the country. At the
Mhm.
top, it says "Defy the Odds," and then at the bottom, it says "Cancer Warrior," and then it has the Project Canine Hero logo on the sleeve. So it's a really badass shirt. To use that word is the best way to describe it. And I've had so many people that say, hey, my brother's fighting cancer right now. I'm going to get him one of the shirts. Or people that have survived cancer. My mom's also a breast cancer survivor, so she's gotten one, and it's just been great to see people want to jump on the bandwagon and not only support Tambo but also symbolize their own fight of defying the odds.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. Are there any other besides projectcaninehero.org, the houndboundbrewing.com, and Tambo's Instagram? Is there any other way people can support what you guys are doing, or reach out to you because they want to get involved?
Yeah, if anyone wants, I'm pretty responsive on Instagram. I've his followers are growing by the day. I think I'm at like 13,000 right now, and it's continuing to grow. But I try to be responsive to to anybody that that reaches out, even if they just want to talk about dogs, or they a lot of people have wanted to donate to Project Canine Hero. Even Tito's Vodka, I talk about the story a lot. I met by chance. I ended up sitting at the same table with Tito a few years ago at a FBI LIDA conference in San Antonio that they sponsored, and him and I, got talking and hung out, and he gave me his cell phone number. So after Tambo's diagnosis, I texted him, and it was crazy because within like an hour, his philanthropy team had contacted me and made two generous donations to Project Canine Hero in Tambo's name, and I still talk to a lot of Tito's assistants and everything like that. So they're big animal lovers over there. So any type of vodka that I drink now
Only
is only
Tito's.
Tito's. Yeah.
Okay, man. Now this is I'm just crazy thinking. Uh, has Tambo ever met the young gentleman that's now what sworn the? I think he's what 13 or 14, and the name is just escaping me because it just struck my pea brain. That was at the State of the Union for Trump. He's like sworn into 1,000 law enforcement
Yeah.
agencies. Have the two of them ever had an opportunity to meet?
No, but I would love
Um,
for them to eventually meet. That would be awesome.
Man, if there's a listener out there that can make that happen, hit me up and or go direct with Chris, and let's make that happen. That would be an awesome event for both of them
Yeah.
to meet fellow warriors like that would
Oh,
be
and it's amazing, and I love to support people that are going through that, and
mm,
to be there for him. And when I finish this children's book, one of the things I wanted to do is take like the first 100 copies down to St. Jude's, and
Jude's.
donate to some children down there, and try to inspire them, and give them hope, especially in a world now where everything seems to be crazy. I think we need more positive stories like this, and to give our younger generation hope. So that's definitely what I'm inspired to do, and I'm driven to do long after my time with Tambo is done. And what I've said before is I don't know how much time I have left with them, but I'm making the most of it. And what I tell him all the time is this is our final call. This is our
Mm.
last call together. This is our last adventure, and this is our biggest one. This is our biggest fight. And we've been in a lot of them, but this is the big one, and this is what we've been preparing our whole life for. And we're going at it. We're going at it full force, and he's not in it
Yeah.
alone. I'm with him, to the very end. And as painful that'll be when that time comes, I'm gonna be there for him, and we're gonna make the most of this.
Chris, man, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for
Thanks,
being
man.
here. And to our listeners, I'll get uh, the Project K9 Hero stuff and contact info in the notes. Uh, Chris, any last words or
Yeah, yeah. So two quick things. One final other appearance. As long as Tambo's health's good, Project Canine Hero does an event in January. It's on January 29th in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called Performers for Paws, where they have country music artists in Nashville that perform, and then it benefits Project Canine Hero, and then there will be a lot of the dogs there in the program. So I plan to be there with Tambo this year in January. I'll be telling his story live to everybody. So I know Project Canine here is also looking for sponsors right now for that event. So if there's any entities out there or companies that want to sponsor, you can reach out to Project Canine here directly, or reach out to me, and I can connect you with Jason. And then the last thing I just want to say is that for anybody that's going through something that, there's always hope to find in the worst situation, and you just have to find that light. And Tambo's enabled me to realize that. And so I know it's a tough world we live in, and we need to have hope, and that's important.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and Tambo's. To our listeners, we're going to wrap it up, and I'm going to remind you, and Chris's story today is just like exhibit A of what I'm about to say to you. Always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons. Until next week, love you all and be safe out there.